Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Myrna Lim Live. We have a very exciting program tonight. We will be talking about public power and probably the fate of PG&E. I came to look at this program because in my district, as I was walking down the street, I saw a bunch of door hangers that talks about this public power initiative that is going to be hitting the ballot this coming November. Also, in my neighborhood, we have received mailers regarding this public power initiative. So tonight, we will attempt to start the debate and the discussion on this very complicated issue, a very important issue that all of us in San Francisco and beyond in the Bay Area will be dealing with. And we did some checking with the Department of Elections website, that's sfgov.org. We don't know yet. We have not seen the draft of the initiative, so we're not quite sure, as a matter of fact, if we are going to be facing this initiative in this coming November. I don't know if the Board of Supervisors have yet voted on it, but in any event, we should have a very interesting discussion. We have tonight an economist, a well-noted economist in San Francisco, Mr. Browne, who will clarify some of the issues on this initiative. But before we do that, I had taken a cursory look at some of the issues that are being tackled by initiative, and then we will pose to Brian the questions. Of course, people are welcome to call and to ask Brian any questions. So I will basically talk about a few of the major components of this initiative. The information that we have received so far is based on the second reading of the initiative that is currently working its way through the Board of Supervisors. This initiative has a few major components, and hopefully the listeners would start looking at it and start paying attention, as I should as well. The first component would be that the Public Utilities Commissioners will be elected, Brian, and it will be the first election will be held in year 2010. Before we go into that, let me introduce first our guest. Brian, welcome to Myrna Lim Live.
Thanks, Myrna.
There you go. Okay, now.
Happy to be back.
Oh, great. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, that you've met Brian, let's go back to some of the components of this initiative. The first one being that the Public Utilities Commissioners will be elected. The first election, if this initiative is approved by the voters, will happen in November of 2010, and the commissioners will be seated in November 2011. This commission will address the need to charge electricity, the production and the delivery, and that this body will also determine the most effective means of providing clean, sustainable, reliable, and reasonable prices. It would also establish a rate payers advocate, a position that will make a recommendation to these 5-member commission that will be elected by the voters. This commission will have the charge of the management, supervision, and the maintenance, extension, and approval of contracts, and so on and so forth. So basically, this will be the body that will be the exclusive body that will be in control of our water and power. these
and sewer, I believe.
and
also.
sewer. Okay, great. Now let's see. This body will have right there have the exclusive control of water, clean energy, and power assets. And then it would also have the exclusive right to enter into contracts, and it would also have the exclusive rights to authorize revenue bonds. And let's see, they have the exclusive right to the use of power revenues, in that at the end of the year they will determine whether or not there are any revenues, extra revenues, that then could be transferred to the general fund. But most of all, the biggest portion, the biggest component of this initiative would be that it would end PG&E 100%. So basically, it says that PG&E will be no more. Okay, so that's a lot to swallow in one take. So let's go to Browne, and let's have him explain to us what the repercussions are, or try to define for us what these issues mean. Take it home, Browne.
Thank you, Myrna. Well, it's a very complex issue, and it's been ongoing for many, many years. As I understand the Raker Act, Hetch Hetchy was forbidden to sell power to PG&E, and they continually violated that section of the Raker Act. And I like to think of, I was on the task force, and we talked often about, and this was during the power crisis, and we talked often about the best way.
Wait a second. Browne, tell me about this task force first. You were talking about a task force. Could you tell our audience what this task force is and what it does and so forth?
Yes. In 2000, Mayor Willie Browne called together an infrastructure task force to deal with water, wastewater, and power issues. And there was a lot of multidisciplinary, a lot of environmentalists, engineers, economists, activists that were assembled, and they discussed these issues, and they put out a final report.
Okay.
And one of the issues they addressed was power, because it was during the height of the power crisis. If you recall that AB 1890 was the deregulation act that had failed, and we were having shortages, and power, people were gaming into our market, and prices was jumping all around.
Was that the time when Gray Davis was recalled? Was that about the same time?
I think this brought about his recall.
Oh, okay. All right.
And because of that, so we thought that the Hetch Hetchy power could be used more effectively, that they could sell high and buy low, and that they should start selling direct access to customers. It's not very difficult. They could have PG&E meter readers look at their meters, and now they could even be electronic. And we recommended that they become a provider not only to the city government but to individual citizens and consumers in San Francisco. And that was one of our strong recommendations. We made numerous other recommendations. We also made recommendations that the right to issue revenue bonds remains with the voters, and that didn't happen in Proposition E in 2002.
Okay.
You want me to continue?
Well, okay. Let's start going back to what you're talking about in terms of what the Raker Act is supposed to, accomplish, as mandated by federal law that was passed in 1913.
1913, and then there was a
okay. But then let's tie that into this initiative. How do they coincide? How do they relate? Is that consistent or not?
Well, they do relate. May I take the opportunity to read about from the Supreme Court decision on April 22nd, 1940. The U.S. Supreme Court reversed the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and ruled 8-1 in favor of the U.S. Interior Secretary Ickes, I think you pronounce it, and directed Judge Roach to reinstate his injunction stopping San Francisco selling Hetch Hetchy hydropower to PG&E. Justice Hugo Black, speaking for the majority, said, and I think this is pivotal, and this is how I understand RACA, Congress clearly intended, referring to the RACA Act, as a condition of its grant, sale and distribution of HHC power exclusively by San Francisco and municipal agencies directly to consumers, in the belief that consumers would thus be afforded power at cheap rates in competition with private power companies, particularly PG&E. I don't think that meant exclude PG&E. I think it meant compete against PG&E for market share.
Okay, so it's not an exclusive granting. It's whose authority or whose decision would it be to either compete with PG&E or to take over the exclusive control of our municipal power? Is that provided in that act or not? It's not.
In the RACA Act, I don't believe so. I believe that the RACA Act says you must sell to the citizens and the government of San Francisco and other municipalities, and these municipalities may not resell power to PG&E, and there was some talk that that was actually happening. And I think that it was meant that we would get the benefit in our service area, consumers, as many as possible, of cheap hydropower, which is the greenest of all and the cheapest, and we basically paid for the dam and so forth and so on. So that didn't happen for a long time. Power was sold to PG&E.
Now, when you say we're selling power to PG&E, what does that exactly does that mean? Does that mean that we're selling the power to PG&E and PG&E merely distributes?
Redistributes it,
Redistributes it? Do they have to process it or?
No. They interestingly enough, our power lines from HHC go all the way to Newark, which is 37 miles from San Francisco.
You mean our power? We
own
it?
Power. Yeah, we own it. It's owned by the citizens of San Francisco.
Okay.
And they didn't build the 37-mile segment of wires. Even though they had the copper wires and everything, they couldn't raise the money for various shenanigans.
37 miles from where?
From Newark to the city.
Newark,
yeah.
These Australian guys, their accents are so hard to understand.
I didn't guarantee good English.
Okay, Newark, from Newark,
yeah.
California
from Newark, which is 37 miles away.
To San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Okay.
So we then use their transmission line. So we have to pay them for that. In return, they pay us a franchise fee for being able to sell power in our service area. So it's it hasn't always balanced, but there was a long period of time where we sold power to them and they resold it to the retail and wholesale customers, and that was clearly forbidden by RACA, both in the Act, if you read it, and by the Supreme Court decision. And I think that we should have aggressively sold HHC surplus power. We're required to give some power to Turlock and Modesto to uplift their water. Mm-hmm. But we gave them a lot more than I believe was required. We should have taken all our surplus power and redistributed to the consumers in San Francisco and, of course, to the government, and passed on in lower user fees and also lower rates for those who were lucky enough to be hooked up to our system. It produces, as I understand it, and looking at the data I have, it produces about the equivalent, nearly 200 megawatt hours a year. In other words, 24/7 it produces that, and approximately 80 megawatt hours go to the two irrigation districts. Modesto gets about 2/3 and Turlock the other third. And they have two classes, Class 1, which is for uplift, and Class 3, which is for street lighting, etc. But, you know, if you've got wires, you can just put them into another grid system.
Okay, now let's talk about one of the issues in that this initiative, if passed by the voters, would allow this newly elected body, this Public Utilities Commission, to issue revenue bonds. I look at the language, it's not clear to me whether or not the Board of Supervisors will have any authority to approve it or disapprove it. It's not quite clear in that initiative, but anyway, what do you think of that idea?
In 2002, Proposition E passed, which took away from the voters the right to issue revenue bonds and gave it to the Board of Supervisors. At that time, there was probably less than $1 billion in revenue bonds either issued or proposed to be issued. Now, without counting all these new issuances they have, there is over $20 billion. And that must all be repaid in user fees. I would like to see us go back to the voter oversight rather than any body, regardless of how good people may see that body as being, such as public power or streetcars or anything. I would like to see bonds issued, or the SFPUC. I would like to see bonds, the oversight going back to the voters and taken back from the board.
You know, looking at a government today, the average person would say, well, you know, our city government cannot even fix our potholes, can't even fix a graffiti problem, let alone run a, you know, an incredibly huge infrastructure. How can we run PG&E, or an equivalent of PG&E?
Well, yes, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I don't believe they can. I think if they started aggressively marketing Hetchy Power on a small scale and gradually ascended the learning curve, they'd be in a much better position to do it, but they haven't been doing that. Now let's look at the CIP, Capital Improvement Program.
Okay.
They have say that they need $4 billion to fix up the water system. That's the local water system and the regional water system. And they will need an additional $4 billion plus to fix up our sewer system. Now we're going to have billions.
Hang on. Didn't we just pass a couple of bond measures not long ago? Didn't we just pass like almost $6 billion?
No, we passed. I'm not sure exactly. We probably the Board of Supervisors passes numerous bond measures, but
no,
the voters. The last major issue that the voters voted on was in 2002 when they authorized the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission to spend $1.6 billion on fixing up the Hetchy system, and they haven't spent that amount yet. But hanging over their heads like Damocles' sword are three acts that were promoted by BASCA, our 29 Peninsula customers, its Bay Area Water Conservation Authority or something like agency. They passed one AB 1823, which says by 2010 you must complete 50% of the fix-up, and by 2015 all of the fix-up. Well, we've probably done between 8 and 10% of the physical work on the regional water system, and it's nearly 2010 right now, so that won't meet the 50% criteria. I believe they've got an even more draconian act going through the Assembly, AB 2437, which will basically make us report nearly everything we do as though we were being supervised by the California Public Utilities Commission, like an investor-owned utility. It's much more tighter control on us.
Okay.
So the answer is no, I don't think the current business model could do PG&E type business. Now they're saying, well, we'll hire PG&E staff under this proposed proposition, and we'll give them pensions, and we'll do that. But that's
and are we going to be clocking huge overtimes?
Yeah, but that's not it. PG&E is a massive organization, so it has a lot of synergism throughout its organization. If you just took the right people, it'd be like taking 3 or 4 players off a team. They might not be as productive on the new team as they were in the old team because they've been together, they understand each other.
Right, but hang on. Are we the only business that PG&E have? I mean, don't they have a lot of other
projects? Yeah, no, they've
projects?
got about 10 million customers spread throughout California. They're regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So anyway, let's talk about this incredible, this huge giant of an infrastructure that this initiative wants to take on. How realistic is that?
As I said, I don't want to. I thought AB 1890, the Deregulation Act, with direct access, it's wire technology. In England, you can change customers on the computer.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, you could sit there and buy hey, they're selling it at a cheaper price. That was what was intended by AB 1890, but the negotiations were so complex where they tried to keep their retail prices and uncouple their wholesalers, and then people figured out ways to game into our markets. We had the power exchange and ISA, and they were playing games, and they were spiking the power to $2,400 a megawatt hour. And then so the state then took over, purchased the Department of Water Resources, actually, of all power contracts. And that ended direct access and a lot of the nuances of AB 1890. It's a vast subject, Myrna, but so I'm going quick, and I apologize.
No, it's a good start. I mean, that's, I think, what we're trying to attempt here. I mean, to the average person, with me, all I want is that when I turn my electricity on, it's on. And that I don't get hit with increases, you know, all the time. I have to think in terms of my pocketbook. And I think pretty much the average person is like that. The administration of the government, the administration of PG&E are just too complicated for the average person to comprehend. But in any event, we are running out of time soon, so 22 minutes to talk about, wow, taking over PG&E. That's a huge subject for such a small amount of time. But anyway, Brian, we're going to bring you back in here. So this is the first bite of this incredibly huge subject matter, and I got an email from the proponents of this initiative. So I think we'll invite them as well.
That'd be great.
Anyway, so we'll start a dialogue, and it'll be an interesting debate. I don't know what will happen. I have just started researching this matter, and anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope that we're bringing you information. Myrna Lim Live.